911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Does a legend walk among us, lurking in the forests of our world?
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my sensor light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. It looks like a man. I don't know what it was.
For over 15 years, we've talked with scientists, researchers, investigators, and witnesses, trying to gain insight and proof around the existence of this mysterious entity.
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Tia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Join us as we continue into the investigation of the Sasquatch experience. And welcome to another edition of Sasquatch Experience. It's me, Sean the Pork Chop Forker, with Henry May, Vance Nesbitt, James Baker, and our guest tonight, the incomparable Brian Seech. Brian, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. How about you guys?
We are making it through. Second episode of the new season, and we're excited and geared up to get things going. Podcast version this week, folks. No video. You don't want to see my ugly mug every week, and if you want to continue to see the video, we encourage you to go to our Patreon and support us, patreon.com/Sasquatch Experience. But we got a great show for you tonight, guys. We're going to talk about Brian's work in Pennsylvania. He's probably one of the longest tenured investigators in Pennsylvania, one of the most trusted, gets along with everybody, and he cuts through the bullshit. He just really likes to get to the investigative stuff and likes to share information. I think Brian was one of the first investigators I met. Brian, you gave me for years just compilations of reports that you gathered and really kind of helped foster that interest and excitement around the Pennsylvania Bigfoot.
Yeah, I met you at the PBS conference, I believe, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, the 05.
Oh, 2005. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's been 15 years of solid bigfooting fun or semi-fun. And you've been doing this a lot longer than that, though. You started well before 2005.
Yeah. We basically started our first organization, Q, in 1985. And I've actually been researching Bigfoot since like the late 70s. I was always interested in it. And we have our group Q. And also in 2012, we brought our new group up, the Center for Cryptozoological Studies. And through that, we research every cryptid there is. Mothman, the Dogman, we've done some Dogman research. And basically any unknown animal, that's basically what we do.
The other thing you did is I've heard you and seen you speak at some of the conferences, and some of the stuff you tell is just amazing. And a lot of the work you're doing is really, you're one of the people that you, like I say it, there's certain people that if they told me that the Loch Ness Monster was a squid, I would believe them. And you're one of the people that when you tell me something, I know you did put in the work. You didn't just read like a blurb and say, this is what I saw. So I want to put that out to everybody, that if you ever meet the man or you get a minute to like listen to his story or even to like ask him questions, he's legitimate. I mean, he doesn't say what he doesn't believe.
Oh yeah. Thanks. It's been a passion of mine and Terry's and our whole organization also. We're out there to hopefully find some answers, and I know the chances of us ever finding answers are very slim, especially in the cryptozoological field. But it doesn't stop us from trying, and we enjoy the we do speak. We don't speak a lot. We pick our spots. We speak here and there. Myself or me and Terry or our friend Fred. We do. We enjoy talking about everything. Our last, actually, the last time I did speak was at the Mothman Festival last year, which you guys were at, and we talked about winged entities. So I really enjoyed that presentation. I tried to put a lot of humor in it, but I guess some of the people down West Virginia just didn't have a good sense of humor.
No, I think that was the funnier part, Brian, is that when we were trying to do you were doing your presentation, like we would laugh because it was funny to us, but that was a hard crowd, man.
It was
rough.
It was. They didn't even like the Godzilla reference with Mothra and Rodan. I don't know.
I don't know. They were dead from the neck down.
It was the theater smell is what it was. The overwhelming, the aroma. I think that triggered everybody.
That was bad, wasn't it? It was bad.
I could say that's one thing I didn't miss this year. I mean, I missed the event, but I did not miss the smell of death.
No. No.
I can't imagine how the buildings next to them put up with that.
It was a police station that's right next to them, too.
Yeah, so. I mean, doesn't smell like Krispy Kremes. You think they'd be mad.
Yeah, it was fun. I thank Jeff Walmsley for having me. I was lucky enough to speak down there twice, and I just love going down there. Everybody does such a fantastic job down there.
Do you have any plans of going back
next year?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, did you get any confirmation for next year yet? But I guess we'll have to wait and break that news later, huh?
Yeah, I really don't know. Steve Ward would know more than I would about that.
Steve, that's another one right there. That guy's an exciting guy. But Brian,
Steve's awesome.
When we were talking, you said we might not ever get answers to cryptids in Pennsylvania. Why do you think that is? What makes, you get stories of, let's just say Bigfoot, because that's what this show's about, right? We get Bigfoot all over the country, stories, reports, depending on where you're at, regionally, everybody's got a different theory and belief, and some really stick hard to that. What makes Pennsylvania different?
I think one of the main things about Pennsylvania is you have two of the longest tenured researchers in Pennsylvania. Obviously, Stan Gordon, everyone knows Stan. And also, my personal mentor is Dr. Paul Johnson.
Absolutely,
yeah. They've both been researching the Bigfoot and UFO phenomena since the 70s, and I think they look at these creature reports differently than your average Bigfooter, which thinks that they are just a flesh and blood animal.
It gets hard to delineate that, right? I mean, myself, I'm a flesh and blood guy.
Yes,
but there are times, Brian. And guys, I think you could all agree with me on this, where the answers just don't add up. Footprints that just end. They just stop. There's no answers to where they go. And as much as I would like it to be flesh and blood, and I believe it to be flesh and blood, I have no problem admitting I could be wrong. But Brian, there's a lot of other interesting reports out of Pennsylvania that kind of make this being seem a lot more than just your average quote unquote bear.
Yeah, Paul Johnson, like I said, he's a member of our organization. We've worked with him. We've been on many investigations with him. He believes that it is a quantum animal, which kind of trying to explain quantum would be, he kind of says it like, well, there is no creature unless there is an observer of the creature. Why do footprints go, there could be a snow-covered field and the footprints will go to the middle of the field and stop. Why does in some reports it seems like the creature floats? Other reports the only actual really weird report that we got is it was right up here in Allegheny County. We live in Beaver County. This is the county next to us, and this creature was crossing the road, and the gentleman said that it was actually disappearing, and by the time it reached the other side of the road, it had completely disappeared. It did not run into the woods. It disappeared before it got to the other side. Now, again, that's a rare report, and I do want to say 90 or probably 99% of the reports that our organization gets, I don't want to speak for others, are just mundane. I don't want to say mundane because you're talking seeing a 6 or 7 foot ape outside your window is not mundane. But there are certain reports that it just don't make sense. Sometimes the red glowing eyes, sometimes seen in conjunction with UFOs. With one of the things that we're starting now in our Q group is we're researching the light sphere phenomena. And the reason that we're doing that is we've had a couple encounters while out Bigfooting, which we have seen these light spheres. One was this year at Livermore, and there was one light sphere that was going across the water, and it looked like it split into two. As we were there historically it was by the Livermore Cemetery, which is there has been Bigfoot sightings there. Also, people have heard screams in the woods. We actually heard one quick scream. It was about 3 years ago, and we were there with our friend Leah. She has a really distinctive, funny laugh, and she laughed, and we were on top of a bridge, and there was like a big valley, and it echoed. And after she laughed, we heard a really quick roar in the woods, and we were all laughing at that, like, let's just make Leah laugh and see if Bigfoot responds, But yeah, there's just certain things for the phenomena. They just don't, like you said, Sean. And as far as me, I'm on the fence about it. Okay, I think some people automatically throw me in the category that I think it's paranormal. I just don't know. I'm on the fence. I still research it. Our organization researches it as if it is a flesh and blood animal. And I believe you do have to start and do that. You're looking for footprints. You're looking for signs, scat. All the things you look for with a real animal. But there are certain things that occur. They just don't make sense.
I
say yes.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like, this thing leaves fecal matter, right? It leaves footprints. It leaves hair. We can't ever get a definitive read on what the hell it is, but it leaves it. I guess my thing is, would a being that has other abilities do that? We don't know. And that's the kind of conundrum we're stuck with that in. I think some of us, and a lot more of us, are willing to entertain that there is at least an aspect of this being we don't understand.
Yes.
Whether it's paranormal, it's flesh and blood, does it have some abilities we don't know? Like, we can only comprehend what we know. If we haven't discovered the potential and possibility of these things, it's just a crapshoot. Go ahead, Vance. You have a question?
Yeah, I do. Actually, it's a question, maybe a commentary, and it ties in exactly with what this specific topic is. Take a look at a primate spider monkey. It's small. Its brain capacity is probably a little bit smaller than a walnut. Take a lowland gorilla. Skull capacity for the gray matter is pretty close to ours. They have opposable thumbs. They can walk bipedally. And then you look at the human, which with our brain mass and size gives us the ability for culture, technology, development, and language. And then you take a look at a squatch that a lot of encounters calls anywhere between 6 foot to 12 foot tall. If a large creature of that stature would seem to me have a larger skull capacity for a larger brain, is that designed for technology? Probably not, because we don't see a lot of that evidence. So that extra brain mass maybe does give it abilities that we haven't comprehended yet, similar to, and I think I brought this up one time before, Sean, similar to that of octopus, which is a very intelligent sea creature, but it has this amazing ability to completely camouflage itself in any environment in which it's in. It can figure out and deduct certain tasks that it needs to do in order to achieve its goal. So with the brain capacity of a squatch, maybe that extra brain matter might be something geared towards abilities that we can't comprehend yet until we are able to sit down in a biology class and dissect a brain, which we don't have that yet.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's a good it's definitely a good analogy. One of the things that my wife, she was always a proponent of. Now I am also because we've been learning a lot from Jamie and Jenny King. You guys know them; they're awesome. Is about frequency and vibration. What if somehow, okay, and again, maybe stretching it, I don't know. What if these creatures can somehow, with their vibration, be, and I want to say seemingly in quotations, invisible? They're not invisible per se, but maybe they can somehow, and again, I don't know how, raise their frequency or their vibration that only certain people can see them. I mean, I don't really think that's totally out there. If you start researching like Tesla and the frequencies and vibrations and things like that, maybe their brain, maybe they can somehow do that. I mean, it could be standing 10 feet from you and you still can't see it. Again,
right.
And I'm being honest with you. I think when you're researching Bigfoot, I think you should try to research the whole. I call it the phenomena more than I call it Bigfoot, and that's the title of Paul's last book, the Bigfoot Phenomenon in Pennsylvania. I think there's more of a phenomena with this creature.
Right. You bring up an interesting point, which I have really thought about. I can't say I've cracked books to research it because a lot of this is just developmental thinking. But remember those toys we used to get in Cracker Jacks, the tops, and you'd spin them outside, and they would look, because of the sunlight, make them look like they're spinning in the opposite direction. Or you ever seen a race car wheels where the wheels look like they're going backwards when the car's traveling forward because of the spectrum of natural light, which is pulsating light. You have equal amount of darkness as you do light being emitted at the same time, but it's at such a frequency. Now we're talking sound frequency with Squatch, but I'm giving a visual representation to natural light. If you hold your hand up to the sun and wave, it looks like your fingers are under a strobe light. Yeah, that is the ability. So what if there's a manipulation to that vibration where you have now put yourself in the dark spectrum and not in the light spectrum? I think it's possible. I do like to say that I don't know. I've never come out and said they're definitely this or they're definitely that. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of hardcore Bigfooters they don't want to hear that, and that's fine. I've learned a lot from them, and but I also have learned a lot from like Jamie and Jenny and Paul and the other side of the spectrum also, and I try to put it all together. And I shouldn't say our organization tries to the best of our abilities to try to make sense of some of this stuff. Well, until we go to Forker's house and dissect the one he has in his garage, I don't think we'll know anything.
Yeah, Sean, when are you going to get along to that? Let's get going, Sean. Come on.
I hit it in a quantum dimension.
No one's supposed to know about that because I'm not sure it's not just a hobo.
It shouldn't have got in the way of my van. That's all I'm saying. No, but you guys both posed some interesting questions. The other thing about our own brain is we only know how a certain amount of it works. Yeah. And there's so much of our brain that's left to, I guess you call it unusable space. If it was a building, we'd leave an awful lot of it empty.
But isn't it ironic that the brain is looking at the brain to figure out how it works?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, this is what we're doing. Well, our brain is focused on looking at our brain to figure out what its abilities are, and our brain might not want to understand what some abilities are.
No. And the whole reason we bring Brian on this program to talk about some of these things is because he's not afraid to talk about it. And there are a lot of people that get polarized. They take one position or another. And Brian's always been fair in his assessment where he's like, we don't really know anything. We collect encounters, we gather information, but we really, outside of those things, Brian, I don't want to put words in your mouth. We really just don't know, right?
I agree.
It's all a crapshoot.
I agree that there are certain people who think they have all the answers. Well, show me, let's produce a creature.
Yeah.
My goal in this, honestly, is to have an encounter. Hopefully my wife and I are there and my members, and then I just might walk away. I want to see it more than anything. My position has kind of changed over the last 2 or 3 years on Bigfoot, and that should I find a dead specimen? I was always, hey, you got to bring it to the people, show it. Maybe I just take some pictures, show some people, and just walk away and let that mystery out there. Maybe the field isn't ready for finding this thing. Maybe we need that mystery in our life. We need that big bad boogeyman out in the woods to stir our imaginations and our passion. You know what I mean?
Well, fair enough. Go ahead, Vance. You're going to say something?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Bake.
Well, one thing, you had mentioned about how maybe it becomes visible or maybe something else. Maybe it's also, maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. Maybe we're not looking at psychological. We always talk about smells and sights and things that happen. And unfortunately, at some point, your brain overloads. And maybe there's just a point that you can't take what you're seeing, and that's where it disappears. Or now evidence-wise, yeah, there's tracks to a certain point and then whatever. But I'm dyslexic, and sometimes I will put a pen down and it'll be 4 feet from me. And if it gets moved or I forgot where it was, until I calm down a minute and breathe a second, that pen is physically invisible, even though it's right in front of me. And maybe we're not looking at it that way scientifically too. It's because maybe at some point your brain goes, this is just too much stimuli. I'm sorry, now all we see is truth.
Yeah. I think there was a really great article. If you guys, it's in, you ever hear of ID magazine? Investigation Discovery magazine.
Yeah.
It was an article on what is reality, and it stated in there that your brain, your eyes, you see so many, and you can we take in over 10,000 images or something to that effect, but we can only process so many. And again, if I get we're actually in the middle of moving here, so I don't exactly know where that magazine is, but when I get those figures, I'll post them for you guys. And maybe it's just certain people can, but certain people's minds are so blocked out. If they're driving down the road and a creature runs in front of them, well, their brain can't handle that. And so the psychological thing, I think, maybe your eyes too. Maybe certain people can only see them. I mean, there's just this nagging, missing piece, I think, to this puzzle. And I've always said that, to me, I don't care if people want to put me in a category or not. It doesn't really matter. I'm out to see a physical flesh and blood creature is what I'm looking for. But there's that big question mark.
Psychologically, I don't think you could prepare yourself for an encounter. The encounter that we had out in, you've been to that. We call it the Meadow many times out there. And we were out there, Brian, with the express purpose of investigating activity. And it hit us when we least expected it. When we were in bed, we were going to get up the next morning for early to, get around the area and check it out. And really early to see if we could, when these things are being seen, if we could be out there when the activity happened. And it came to us and we weren't prepared. And I almost quit. I spent a good portion of my, my adult life and most of my life being interested and fascinated by it. And it scared me so much that it bothered me so much on a profound level that I almost quit. And you really empathize with people after you experience something like that.
Yeah.
Because, I don't care. I think everybody we've talked to over the years that have had an experience, they've had that. I don't want to say it's a sense of dread, but it's a sense of shock and awe. Where this isn't supposed to exist and it's here in front of me. What the hell do I do next? And then it shakes you to the point where, this, no matter how much you investigate and want to believe, until it's there in front of you, you just always had that doubt. And there are times, Brian, I still doubt what the hell I saw because I think it's a defense mechanism because I don't like to get caught up in the bullshit and get drugged down and become that diehard believer because I still want to be skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, psychologically, you make a good point that, maybe some people can't see it. Maybe it's a physiological thing, but maybe there's a defense mechanism that if some people saw it, they wouldn't even believe it.
Yes. Yeah. One of the interesting things, we had 2 cases here in Beaver County where we live. And one was a case that happened in 1970 where an eyewitness and her friend were riding horseback after a really bad storm. And this creature just got up and it put its hands above it and like growled, and they took off on their horses. So we actually met this lady probably in 2003 or 2004. And immediately after some 30 some years or 40 years, 40 some years, she had goosebumps up and down her arm, and she started grabbing her arm. And she says, I haven't told anybody about this in over 40 years. This was a psychological effect that 40 years ago it bothered her. And then another one that we had happened in 1973, the great wave, obviously, of Bigfoot and UFOs in Pennsylvania, where this gentleman, I was working at LL Bean at the time, and we had a little meeting, and they said, hey, tell us something about yourself that nobody would know. And I said, well, I'm a researcher, blah, blah, blah. I research Bigfoot, and this one guy's looking at me. And afterwards he looked at me like his eyes were almost blank. He says, I saw it. And this guy was about 6'2", big. He immediately grabbed his arms and like started shaking. He says, oh, just like that. I'm like, and then he started remembering it, and he drew it for me. And it was at a trailer court here where they actually did find a print. He was sitting he was a kid. He was a boy then, probably about like 8 or 10 maybe. And he was sitting there, and he sees movement. He was in a trailer. He looks outside of his window, and he sees this movement. He sees this big, hairy creature stop, and it sees him, and it turned to him. And he told me, he says, it turned, and then when it saw me, its eyes turned red. He says, its eyes were not red until he saw me. So is this eye glow, is this something like a defense mechanism for them to scare you or something like that? But he was upset about it, again, some 40 some years afterwards. So something that affects you that bad over 40 years, to me, it had to happen to you.
Brian, do you remember the time we were on the expedition, the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society expedition in Keystone State Forest? And Cindy Dragusin, Tim Cassidy, and myself brought you guys all back to this spot where we had some activity going on.
Mm-hmm.
And we had all heard this loud crash to the brush, so we went after it. Or I went after it. I think you guys went after me to put me in my place for going after something. And, as we all went to the tree line, I think it was Norm Gagnon that saw that humanoid figure in the woods on the other side of the tree line where we were leaving as that big storm was getting ready to come through.
Yeah. Well, that was a long time ago. Yeah.
That's a long time ago, right?
Yeah. I had to think about that.
Have you ever been on any other group outings like that where there's been activity and, you think you've been close?
The one that really sticks to my mind is down at Salt Fork State Park. And ironically, it was during one of the Bigfoot conferences down there, but we at the handicap shelter, I'm sure you've been there.
Absolutely.
We had half of our, and this was, probably 06, maybe 05. Half of our members were already sitting there, and me, Terry, and Dave Rupert, we pulled in. Okay, Terry and I were in one car. Dave was in another. We get out of the car, and we all took about maybe 4 steps, and all of us, like in sync, stopped. And we looked at each other, and we felt this. I can't even explain it. It was kind of like a feeling of dread. It was kind of like something was there watching you. And we all turned to each other at the same time, and we said, something's off here. Now, we've been to that place plenty of times, and nothing. But that time, so we go back to our people, that were there. We had about 6 other ones sitting there, and they said, something's off tonight. They said that too. They said, something's off. So me and Dave went back to our vehicles, and we got our. He had the night vision. I had a what do you call it? Headset for my parabolic. We walked up and down, around the woods and everything. We didn't hear anything. We didn't see anything, or we didn't smell anything. But boy, you felt you felt like there was something there. You know, the old saying is you being zapped or, infrasound type thing. If there was once, and again, though, we did not see anything, okay? Any kind of noise, I would have picked it up with the parabolic mic, any kind, but nothing. So we were there about 20 minutes, and all of a sudden it was like somebody gets a light switch, turns it off. The woods, you heard a little bit of noise. The woods felt alive again. But I'm telling you, it was like dead silence. It was almost like you were in a different zone. That was one of the times, if I had to say there was something there, I would. I can't prove it. I can't prove it at all. But, and if you ever talk to Dave Rupert, he'd tell you the same story.
Yeah, I want to, just make an amendment to that story and say that was really before the Ohio Conference became this big Ohio Conference now. It was still the Don Keating.
Yes.
It was still a decent event, but a much smaller in scope before Salt Fork became a Bigfoot tourist attraction.
Yeah.
Really. Because I think people, Brian, they don't understand that for guys that have been around a long time. A lot of these areas people go to now used to be really decent Bigfoot research areas. And maybe I don't want to take anything away from it today, but it's just not what it used to be.
Agreed. Even like, when we were, my days or our days, me and Terry, our days in the PA Bigfoot Society, the one thing that I always took from them and all the members and the officers and everything, they stated, hey, just because you see a tree bent in the forest, it's not a Bigfoot. Just because you hear something in the woods, it's not a Bigfoot. They taught skepticism, and I've tried, and so have you. We have tried to bring that to our research. I see a lot of the newer groups, not to bash them, but they'll go out and they'll see two trees knocked over. Oh, that's evidence of Bigfoot. It's like, did you see I was always told, did you see a Bigfoot do that? No, and you can't say it was Bigfoot. You can present your evidence. I found this and that, and leave it at that. We never said we saw Bigfoot tracks. We saw unknown tracks. I think the actual Bigfoot says the Bigfoot groups in general today have lost that skepticism. It's like they want to go out and they want to have activity every single time. So in their mind, every single time they go out, they have activity. And Sean, that's not true. You don't get activity to me that often, to be honest with you.
No, I think in the years I've done this, there's been 2 or 3 times I've had an experience with something that can't be explained. 2 or 3 times out of hundreds.
That's it. I would agree.
Right?
Not more. Yeah.
And I think that was one of my frustrations, trying to keep an organization together is when you bring in new members, there's a romanticism that happens with newer members that frustrates the people that have been doing this a long time. Yeah. Every bump in the night and every sound, oh, that's Bigfoot. Or the rationale is let's not try to explain it. Let's just keep it unexplained because it's fun and scary.
Yeah. Going back to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. I was there like 99, 2000. We went to, I think, 13 straight, Terry and I. And back then it was more about research. It was more about your guys are out in the bush, and but now I call it, not to bash it. I haven't been back to it in probably 3 years. It is more of the Finding Bigfoot crowd. Finding Bigfoot, I do believe, there's a debate. Is it good or bad for Bigfoot? I would say probably more bad than good. The good from Finding Bigfoot is it brought Bigfoot into mainstream society. I mean, for all the newer people. The bad is, some of these groups come, I want to whoop and knock on and oh my God, Bigfoot's out there he's not. I think they're in particular areas. I think they roam, but I don't think if you're going out every single time and having some experiences, well, I just don't think that happened. I know that's skeptical, but that's from my old PBS days, and I'm not going to change that.
No, you can't. And I don't think it's a safety thing. I don't think it's sounding like grumpy old men or curmudgeons. And, Terry as well, your wife's very well established in the field, very, credible researcher like yourself, very well researched. She and Carrie Rupert put on a fantastic presentation.
Yeah, Woman in Bigfooting. Yep.
Yeah, at Creature Weekend. And I honestly, not to draw comparisons between conferences, but what I liked about Creature Weekend was that I felt that event became the event for the researchers
Yes.
where the other one became like a Comic-Con for Bigfoot.
Yeah, and if that's what you like, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I just, I've just done it so long, Sean, that actually we're doing less in the actual field, not as much the research. We're still doing the research, but going to all the Bigfoot conferences and hearing the same speakers and blah blah blah. It's like there's not a lot new coming out in the field. Let's be honest. There's some. I mean, on the Olympic project, they're doing really good. Amy Boo with her project Zoo Book, and Amy, she's awesome.
Absolutely.
But there's not. I mean, am I missing something? I don't see a lot new coming out of the field. I wish there was, but again, I could be wrong.
And look, I make this complaint weekly or bi-weekly with these guys is that we really got to, turn the dial up and think differently and do different things to get different results. And like you said, if that's your cup of tea, the Bigfoot Comic-Cons and whatnot, go for it. And, I have no problem with people trying to make money off this venture. Good luck making a lot of it. It ain't going to happen. But it's just, for me, I want to get back into a event where it is like a symposium where researchers present their evidence and findings to researchers and they communicate in Congress over it. It's not meant to be entertainment for the masses. It's meant to be research sharing and gathering. Those things become harder to find because that big ego word gets involved, and I think some people, when they try to elevate themselves to a certain status of celebrity or whatnot, they want to call themselves whatever, like you start being able to take that criticism. And I think that criticism is incredibly necessary for you to stay grounded and level headed.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 20 years. I don't know shit. I have no qualms telling people that. It's based upon, we know what we share with each other, but really at the end of the day, we've got some sounds, we've got some footprints, we got a Bigfoot butt print, if you believe in the Skookum cast, we've got some video, but we don't really have anything but a bunch of sighting reports from people the world think is crazy.
Yeah.
So you got it together. It's not really scientific.
Yeah, it's I think everybody does get into it. I do believe at first to find answers, and then after that, people just do kind of do what they want after that. But for the newer ones that just get in it, I think if they don't have their answers right away, or they're not seeing tracks, or they're not, then they just want to give up. I mean, we've been doing this, like I said, for a long time, and with all the other mysteries too. And that's why kind of Bigfoot for us is kind of being pushed in the background a little bit, because I don't know what else our organization can bring to the table. And there's so many other organizations out there. We kind of always like to do research, the other stuff that people aren't doing. And we do it kind of under the table. We don't share everything, our findings, or, when we go to speak, we'll say some of the things that we've done and stuff. But I always say, Fred, my friend Fred, and we always say, like, when we give presentations, they're not there, Sean, to hear me and Fred. They are there to hear the encounters that have come to us. It's nothing about me and Fred. Or if you give a present, it's not about you. It's about what you know. And I always said Fred and I can go out there with Bozo the Clown mask and nobody would care, because they're listening to what we know. We know that we've always been under the radar, and we're cool with that, because it is about the phenomena. This phenomena is going to be here long after I'm gone.
Absolutely. Henry, did you have a question?
Well, actually, I don't really have a question. It's more of sort of a statement, and that's, well, it goes back to something that Stan Gordon looked into. He received a video which was shown on the trail of Bigfoot by Seth Breedlove and Small Town Monsters, of a footprint trail that seemingly began out of nowhere and ended out of nowhere. Now, how do you explain that? How the heck do you explain that? I can't find an explanation for that.
Yeah, I've asked people about that. Some, the diehard. I shouldn't say diehard. The flesh and blooders, Jamie calls them apers. I think it's funny. Is okay. Well, they backtracked. I mean, that's what I've asked. I mean, and I do want to hear. I want to hear from the other side. I don't really care when it comes down to. I don't care what Bigfoot is. I just want to research Bigfoot, and I could see it if Bigfoot were to be caught or shot tomorrow, whatever. The people who believed that it was flesh and blood, they're going to beat their chests and say, "I told you guys so." Or if somehow they prove that Bigfoot's coming out of a portal in and out, then those people are going to beat their chests. I'm going to be like, "Great, maybe we solved the mystery. I'm going to move on to the next thing. I don't care. I have no dog in the fight, sort of thing. What it is, and I can't. I wish Henry. I wish I can explain more. After all the years doing it, I kind of feel like an idiot sometimes. I really do, because all the reports I've read, all the times we've gone out, all the equipment we've used, and we don't have a whole hell of a lot. And again, I don't know if that's on me and my organization, if we're just not good researchers, or there's just not that much out there. I don't know.
Mystery, man. It's the mystery. I don't have answers for it, and I consider myself pretty damn good. I'm kidding, but there's just not a lot of answers. But Henry, again, you go and you hear these stories that I've grown up hearing. Brian, I think he and Terry started in 1986.
Yeah.
That was a year after I was born. Okay. So they've literally been doing this since I was in diapers. But these are the stories I hear from these guys. I hear from Stan, who was doing it when Brian was in diapers, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Like these stories, they don't stop. I think in the 70s, they got a little fantastical. Is there a UFO Bigfoot connection? Stan's been talking on that for years. I don't think Stan doesn't publicly say either way. He puts the information out there and lets you decide it. I think, and you can correct me on it because you're far closer with Dr. Paul than I am, Brian. Does Dr. Paul think there's a connection to it?
He thinks it's more of like a quantum animal. When the creature is here and it's being seen, it's every bit like a bear. You know, it's flesh and blood when it's here. But my friend Fred always says, "Where does it come from? Where does it go?" And so there's a lot of it just doesn't make sense, and it gets so frustrating. But again, we haven't quit. We haven't bowed out. We'll probably never quit. We'll probably, just fade away like a Bigfoot into the woods. It's an interesting subject.
There still is no scientific explanation for gravity. Well, we experience gravity 24/7 our entire existence here. So, there again, you can have something right underneath your nose, and we just cannot grasp an understanding of it. So as a quantum creature, it could be possible. I don't think any of us here on this panel would say, no, that's absolutely not possible, because we don't know enough about physics yet. I mean, we understand that there's dark matter. We know it exists, but we can't prove it.
Yeah.
And I feel the same parallel in this community with Bigfoot. And you brought up a really good, I'm going to make two more points. You brought up a good point about backtracking and why the tracks would disappear. That maybe that's just as much of a symbol as tree breaks are, or these tree formations. Who's to say it's not a form of communication? But you keep bringing up Fred. We got to give a shout out to Fred Saluga because, hey,
Fred's my buddy.
yeah, he is such a good individual, and I like his thinking, and he falls right into this puzzle, just like we do. With don't go too fantastical. Let's look at this, but let's not judge anybody either. Let's just get an answer. It would be great, but on my behalf, I kind of like the mystery too, though.
You'll always know what's on his mind. That's for sure.
Yes, you will. Yes, Fred doesn't hold back.
He won't hide it, Sean. He's not going to hide it.
He will not, and you got.
But he's of that age where what's he got to lose? Nothing.
You got a lot of these older researchers that have been in this a long time that will still tell you, I don't know shit. Anybody that's out there telling you that they know something doesn't know shit.
Right.
And that's collectively we've gathered information. I don't want to sound ignorant. Like we have gathered some information, right? But it's still so far from conclusive. As even Dr. Meldrum, though may be a well-established scientist and a good dude, we've all broken bread with Dr. Meldrum and have had great conversations. He still doesn't know. He could be wrong. We can all be wrong. And I think that's okay. Like the moment we stop asking questions and we start presenting things like we know this is the absolute truth, we all lose.
Yeah.
And, maybe, Brian, there's truth to what you said. This mystery is going to stay well past us. The one thing I get, and I'll get your opinion on this, everybody's like, well, technology is getting so good. I think technology is getting so good, but it's still limited by the user. How many people are actually training themselves to be top notch with this technology?
Mm-hmm.
You could take a good picture with an SLR if you know how to use an SLR camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated. It's not easy. If you want to get that perfect shot, for something that moves as fast as a Bigfoot is supposed to move, or, you get that opportunity where you can actually react, you need to be able to know how to take that image quickly. I was taking cell phone videos of monkeys at the Erie Zoo when Bake and I were up visiting the Fargiorgios. Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised how many times my iPhone 11 Pro Max went out of focus when I was taking videos of these monkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah, did I get some good shots? Absolutely. But there are still times where these things are in motion where it's very hard to get them to take a decent picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there with the express purpose to take pictures of monkeys. Like I should have been better prepared to take better photos, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not prepared to have an experience with a Sasquatch. As much as you want to, you're never prepared. Yeah,
there was an interesting Rupert Sheldrake has a book out there, The Sense of Being Stared At. I don't know if you've ever read that. In one of his stories, and this does pertain to, I think, to Bigfoot. There was a wildlife photographer over in Africa. He was filming. He was like hidden, but he was filming a pack of monkeys. And he said all at once, the whole pack stood up and looked in one direction. Okay. He said they looked in one direction for just a short period of time. He says, then they were standing up, then they all went back down and they left. They ran away. And so this photographer says, I got to see what's going on here. What's coming? So he said he waited about 45 minutes to an hour. And then there was a posse, or however you want to call it, of 2 or 3 people, along with some Native Americans not Native American, natives in Africa, and they were carrying packs and things like that. So these monkeys knew these people were in their territory almost 45 minutes to an hour until they got there. So if a pack of monkeys can do it, what can a Bigfoot do? The Bigfoot's going to know you're there as soon as you get there. So they're going to keep their angles. They're going to watch you. So when I read that one story, I'm like, wow, this could explain a lot. Like with Bigfoot, if a wild pack of monkeys, looked and they knew that this guy was coming and they heard him, why wouldn't Bigfoot do that?
One of the things I have to say, I don't know if you read Max Brooks' De-Evolution.
No.
Kind of like the Bigfoot horror story has been kind of popular lately.
Excellent book.
Yeah, it is. And Henry, you could agree with me. There was a lot of thought and detail put into the actual Bigfoot behavior in the story. Like Brian, he actually looked at the behavior of chimpanzees and kind of looked at supposed Bigfoot behavior, and kind of like put it together to create this behavioral profile for these Bigfoot in his novel. And it's a horror story, but there's a lot of very interesting. I felt like it was almost written by a Bigfoot researcher because he put that much attention to some details in there that other people that have written this kind of stuff haven't. It was a slow burn of a book, but once it picked up, it really picked up. And I think it kind of, when we look past the great apes, we look past chimps and gorillas, and we look at their behavior. I don't think we draw enough comparison to what they do and how they interact overall. And if we can put that into some sort of behavioral profile for a Bigfoot, some people do. I just don't. I think more people get caught up in this forest people mentality, and they don't really think of this as, well, let's kind of start at a more rudimentary level. Let's break it down a little bit more basic and see if we can go from there. Because what he wrote in that book was fantastic in its element and expression, and I think could be very beneficial if we all took that time to research and study great apes a little bit more.
of course, you remember William Jurgenus.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, love Bill.
He told me, he says, there's a book you got to read, Tom Brown. I said, yeah, I have Tom Brown, a.k.a. the Tracker. He wrote a lot of books, and he was basically taught by a Native American, what do you call it, an elder, how to track, and he learned the way. He says, there's a book out there, and right now I think it's called Way of the Scout. And he says, you read this book, Brian. And he looks at me, he goes, that's Bigfoot. The patterns, what they do. And I'm like, so I've never got through the whole book. I mean, probably about halfway, because I kind of jump around when I read. It's like, okay, the Native Americans, they would watch the cavalry and stuff, and they'd hide in the shadows. They watched what the cavalry did. They watched what they did, and they did the opposite. And it's just, if you guys ever get a chance to read Way of the Scout, it tells you, and he goes, that's Bigfoot. Bigfoot does what the Native Americans did. And it's you think about it, if you watch somebody long enough, just a regular person, you're going to know their tendencies, you're going to know what they do, you're going to know where they go. People are pretty much people of habit, okay? And this is what I think these things do. They know when the people are in the woods, if they live, in the woods by some of these people, they're going to know, hey, these people go to bed at such and such time, blah, blah, and they watch them. I mean, I always say that we're people TV for them, or Sasquatch TV. They watch us. And they learn, because we're the ultimate apex predator, right? They learn to stay away from us, and whatever we do, they do the opposite. So if you put it in that perspective, you can learn a lot.
Even with cultural television and all the Bigfoot research shows that you have seen, look, humans, we make ourselves so damn obvious when we go. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if you're in a research party or not. You are not focused 24/7 on your surroundings. If you're there with other people, you're having conversations, you're making noise, you're banging pots and pans, you're building a fire. Your presence is so damn well known, which why you had brought up a story earlier, Brian, regarding the horses. And I presented this question to Sean and Henry a while ago about, has there been any researchers to use a horse? And this is now the third time I've heard, okay, there's been an encounter on horseback. And maybe that would be a tool because, a horse doesn't sound like a clumsy bulldozer walking through the woods like a person would on a hike. Maybe the smell of a horse or something. I've always kind of been drawn more towards research on horseback and not in large groups that make a lot of noise, and try to keep your presence to a minimum. And I think that's exactly what happened, in the PG film. They were just doing their thing, not making lots of noise with each other. They're on horseback. And maybe that's how an encounter may happen. I'm just speculating and looking for a different way and a different approach. But
Bake, what do you want to put in there, Bake?
I watched the movie. It was called Jeremiah Johnson. It's about a story about a man who learns trapping from one of the great trappers up there. And he said the one thing was, he goes, I always bring a horse because the moose don't know how many legs a horse got. Bears don't know how many legs a horse got. So in other words, they just see it as a horse. They don't see you. They see that other animal. Like that animal basically masks you.
Well, that's kind of my point. It's just a different tactic, that's all. But, getting back to your point, Brian, we are kind of klutzes to our environment. And that's why I think Native Americans have more of a adaptability to their environment, and through observation, maybe Squatch taught the Native Americans how to actually hunt. I don't know, we're just speculating, but how to become one in the woods and not be seen could be an observed thing from a Squatch and learn from earlier man. I'm only proposing questions. I'm not certainly trying to say, hey, I've got an answer here. Not everything is Sasquatch.
Yeah, and I like that because that's kind of like on the lines that we're at right now. We're learning our frequencies, vibrations. We're kind of moving in a different direction from Bigfoot. I'm not saying we're never going to give it up. Don't get me wrong, but there were so many other mysteries, so many interesting things to explore, to do. I think I probably spent too much time just on Bigfoot my whole life. There's just so many different, we do paranormal investigations also, and UFOs. We were both in MUFON. We research UFOs and different cryptids. You got your dogmans, all winged entities, all other kind of, so many different interesting things that, like, for us anymore, just to focus on one thing, I'm doing a disservice to ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. Brian, is there one Bigfoot encounter in Pennsylvania, or one Bigfoot encounter period, that really stands out as the one that comes to mind the most whenever you think about Bigfoot?
Well, one of the weirdest is probably Stan Gordon's Uniontown case, where the UFO lands and there was two creatures that came out and they shot at it, and the one creature put his hand up and the craft just disappeared. That was probably one of the one of the weirdest in Pennsylvania. That was
recreated in Invasion on Chestnut Ridge.
Yes, that was the one, and that to me was probably the strangest case in Pennsylvania.
Where's your favorite place in Pennsylvania to investigate? And it's very active. You don't have to give a direct spot. I'm not asking for GPS coordinates, but where's your favorite place? Because there's a lot of touristy kind of areas in Pennsylvania for cryptid Bigfoot research. Where's your favorite region to go to?
Well, in Pennsylvania, definitely in Ohio, though, it's Beaver Creek State Park. We've probably had more interesting things happen there. But probably in Pennsylvania, we used to be, when we were with the PA Bigfoot Society, we would go up on the Chestnut Ridge a lot, and that's still, that Westmoreland and Fayette are two of the biggest ones. But we do Raccoon and Beaver in Brady's Run State Park here, so I would have to say probably those two.
I like that,
and they're both in Beaver County. Yeah.
I like to ask people that, get an idea. Because, my favorite's still Clearfield County, mainly because it's so weird. A lot of unusual phenomena up there, not just Bigfoot, some other strange things that have happened to people up there. We had that bright flash of light when we were up there that one time. And
I was actually just thinking about that when you mentioned when you got, I'm like, I forgot to,
There was
that was weird. That just happened, and then that was it. Remember? It was just like,
yeah, we all looked to make sure we weren't missing time and shit. Like, it was just one flash of light. Guys, I'm serious. We're all standing there, having a conversation. I think we had just maybe done some call blasting there. I don't know.
I think we did, yeah.
And boosh, big flash of light. And we're like, what the hell just happened? And it was unexplainable. That's the second time, Brian, that's happened to me, period, when I've been out researching. It happened to me once out here in State Game Lands 252 out behind the Allenwood Prison, and it happened when we were out there in Clearfield. No explanation behind it whatsoever. Like, I can't explain it was just so strange. And, folks, these are the things you run into when you're out here doing the investigation of the unexplained. Brian, where's your dream place to investigate? You go somewhere. Where do you want to go that you haven't been to that's a must on your bucket list?
Well, I'd love to. It's not Bigfoot related, but I'd love to go to Roswell, and I'd love to go to Sedona, Arizona. As far as Bigfooting, wow. Probably out California, maybe Bluff Creek. Would probably love to go there just once.
Henry, Vance, Brian Baker, Brian, do you have any questions for yourself? Because
hey, Sean, I question myself every day, buddy. Still no answers though.
I wanted to chime in. Sean will back me up on this. Referring back to the backtracking thing. See, I said that years ago on a radio show with Eric Beckier when he was on there. And Eric kind of savaged me a little bit about that. He kind of mocked and ridiculed me about that.
Really? He was such a good guy.
Yeah. Well, guess what? He's dead. I won. That's all that matters. I have no love loss for Eric Beckiard whatsoever. Yeah, I'm still holding on to that, Baker. That's going to be
That man hated us. Oh
that's
my
gonna
God.
be that's going to be my final words. Dan,
I
Rebecca,
survived longer than you.
I lived longer than you. Miserable person. And they say if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. But you know what? I could care less about him. He's
Never met him.
it was
I
a
never met
monster. Well, you
That's a
didn't.
good thing.
Yeah, he harassed me, Brian, like you wouldn't believe, and I was like one of the last people he ever harassed. So I didn't
Oh,
kill him.
wow. Okay, I didn't know that, Sean.
In case people are out there listening, I didn't kill him. It was natural causes. It wasn't me. But yeah, he was a crazy man. He was definitely different. And there are, you know what? This is a field of personalities. It really is. And you're going to have good contact with people. You're going to have crappy contact with people. But I've always been glad, Brian, that we've always had good contact because you're one of those guys. You and Terry are those people you can go to and you know you're not full of shit. You know you guys care enough to listen and you'll share information and you don't act like you know everything. And that means a world to a guy like me. So thank you both. And I know it means a lot to people like our listeners too that really need good outlets for information.
Oh yeah, thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. You know, we try to help who we can, you know, as much as we can, because you know we're staring at that retirement down the road here. That we won't be doing this forever, and you change perspective on a lot of things, Sean. When you see people, even like you know Dave Dragazin, who unfortunately passed, and you see really good people like that Rosemary. You see Ellen Guiley. You see really good people. They're suddenly not here anymore, and it just makes you really think that you know it's more about like you know being a good person and less about Bigfoot or ghosts or UFOs. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, it's a fraternity. It really is, good or bad. It's got its characters, and I think we all have to realize we are. If you're researching this mystery, we are all in this together. So let's not be dicks to each other, and let's just learn and grow and try to do our best. Some people will learn that. Some people won't learn that. But if you don't learn it, I don't want to hear you complain about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, question: what is our fraternity name? I eat a pie.
What?
I think Sean.
Believe what you want. Just don't be a dick.
Yeah, and you know
exactly.
What? I learned. I try to take knowledge from every person that I've ever encountered and dealt with, good or bad. And you can learn a lot from people if you're just willing to listen to them. You don't have to agree with them, but you also got to remember that they've spent their time, effort, and money in researching this thing too, and that's got to mean something too. I mean, you definitely don't have to agree with what they believe. But man, just can you consider it because they're trying, you know, this to the rest of the public, we're nuts. I mean, although Bigfoot has really gained, you know, in popularity, we're still crazy to most of these people. We're still laughed at. So just you know, do your best is all you can say in life, I guess.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because some of us were here before it was popular. Some of us will be here after it's lost its popularity, right? Mm-hmm. Some people still have to be stewards of this field, and you know, history will be to those of us that stayed the course, I think. And no matter if it was a show on Animal Planet or the Discovery Channel or what have you. And I'm not saying anything against those guys because you know what? I love Cliff. I know Cliff personally. He's a hell of a guy, good researcher. But you know what? Things out on those TV shows are out of their control too. It's right. And a lot of this show itself, even though you'll get some good information about it, the good part of Sasquatch Experience is still entertainment. And that's how you appeal to the masses these days is by making it a little bit more entertaining. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sound like Foster. I haven't drank that much. The hiccups. There's a Dean Martin celebrity roast reference for those of you young enough to.
Oh, you mean Foster Brooke?
Maybe I was drinking more than I thought I was tonight.
Well, I personally, sorry if I jumped in front of anybody, but I personally want to say thanks to Brian for doing this with us. It's fun to catch up with you, sir. We only met once, and that was last year at Mothman, but it was a pleasure ever since. So thanks for doing this with me.
Oh, you're welcome. I had a great time, guys. Thanks for having me. You can learn a lot, like for talking in these shows like that, and I still thank you for your Chicago Mothman and 8,000, or was it 6,000 cameras, right?
4,000, I think, was the last count. Yeah, 4,000 cameras and no
4,000,
evidence.
and yeah, I used that in my presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to thank Brian for coming on. Been a while since I've talked to him, and it's good to get him on the show.
Oh, thanks. Nice talking to you too. I haven't seen you since the Ohio conference so many years ago.
Yeah, I think it was 2013. I think it was
something like that. It's been a while.
Brian, again, personally, thank you for coming on the show. You guys, you and Terry mean a lot to me as friends, good researchers in Pennsylvania. Where can folks find out more about you?
We do have 2 Facebook pages. Center for Center for Cryptozoological Studies at Facebook.com, and also Center for Unexplained Events on Facebook. You can just go on there and just message me if we are looking for sightings, especially of other different creatures, say the Mothman, Dogman, any other kind of unknown creature. Just shoot us a message, or we'd love to talk to you and get your report.
And if I get any that come your way, Brian, I'll make sure to shoot them off to you as well.
Sure. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
Well, folks, you've been listening to the SASQUATCH Experience. Sean Forker, Henry May, James Baker, Vance Nesbitt, and Brian Seech. To find out more about us, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/SasQuatch Experience. Email us, squatchexperience@gmail.com. That's all we have for this week. We will see you next time.
You've been listening to SASQUATCH Experience. Please rate and review wherever this podcast is consumed. To share your experience, visit us on Facebook or email us, squatchexperience@gmail.com. Keep on squatching.